those beautiful clouds?
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
Hi, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineeringWatch.org radio for another week of trying to update on global events, climate engineering, how it all glues together. I'm going to have a guest on today, Greg Palin. He's a former congressional candidate from Georgia. Greg has an interesting story on how he became involved with the climate engineering issue and what he's done to try to help the cause. He's done a lot, actually. I wish we had more like Greg, but he's a great guy and has quite a bit to share with his background in politics and so forth, and certainly a story we want to hear. Also with us today, of course, Russ Tanner, Global Skywatch. Russ is the reason this radio show can happen, because he's the tech end of things, and he does a lot for the common good with this cause. Richard as well, Richard Sachs from Arizona, who has brings tremendous insight to a lot of issues with this equation. You know, I know week after week, the same process for weather. It's a moot point even repeating it. It's very similar this week in some places in the east, although the big up and down movement of temperatures is occurring yet again. I think Chicago's supposed to be up to almost 70, either today or tomorrow, and then it's going to go back down and snow again. And the increased sporadicness of these fluctuations, again, should be big red flags to people. We're expecting an IPCC report to be out, was supposed to be out today originally, and they've moved it to Monday. And I believe behind the scenes there's probably considerable wrangling going on with trying to downplay the reports, trying to control it. Same thing they did last time when this came out, and many might remember last year, the end of 2013, and a lot of headlines that this report said that global warming had stopped, which was a law report, never said that, but media, that's what they spun and ran with, and that should be a big red flag to people, because we've discussed week after week on this program that the media has changed directions. Now they simply seem to be engaged in only trying to hide the scope of climate meltdown that geoengineering is also helping try to hide, and the mainstream media is trying to hide the tracks of the geoengineers at the same time. So same story, similar process, but we do see a change in pattern in that they've allowed the breakdown of the high-pressure zone blocking the west to allow moisture to flow in off the Pacific now. And so it seems this is just a change of direction for the swamp cooler for the country, if you will. So in Northern California, they put the big headlines up, we're going to get substantial amounts of rain and so on and so forth. But as this rain moves across us, they're aerosolizing it. Very visible on the radar, extremely visible. You can see these big bands of moisture coming through, but nothing hits the ground, or very little hits the ground. We've gotten a bit of rain, probably a third or a fourth of what we would have or should have gotten. So they aerosolize this moisture with very small particulates so that there's too many condensation nuclei, which causes the moisture to adhere to that and migrate further. And if you're outside in a place where I live in the woods, there's no other sounds, and you can hear jet after jet after jet as this moisture is moving across us, and nothing's falling. And it's astounding how well they can migrate this moisture. So they migrate it further east into these massive, massive aerosolized clouds with very little precipitation that covers, on some occasions, 60, 70, 80% of the country. 2 or 3 days ago, it was about 85% of the country covered with largely rainless cloud. Now, again, those that acknowledge geoengineering is going on but don't seem to acknowledge its short-term cooling effect, they need to look at this. It does have a very profound short-term cooling effect, again, at the cost of a worsened overall warming. And what's telltale of this, when you look up through these incoming storm fronts as they're passing over, if you do happen to see a break in the lower level clouds, if you can even distinguish the lower level clouds, because the aerosols tend to melt everything together into more or less a featureless sky. But if there is a break enough to see some definition in the lower level clouds and you see a break, if heavy spraying is going on, and it almost always is over these systems, there's an overstory of white above the lower level clouds. This is telltale of a full canopy of climate engineering above. This reduces convection, which also keeps the precipitation from falling. So again, it's important people to remember that the vast majority of the climate engineering is going on above some sort of existing cloud cover, whether it's a blanket of aerosols or natural clouds, either or. So it's not just the horizon to horizon trails on an otherwise clear day. Really trying to pound that point home with people. And also, I still see a lot of people, and even some that are credentialed, that are portraying the short, bright trails as being a condensation trail. This simply is not backed up by data. These bright-colored trails do not match anything that would be historically considered a condensation trail. And as we've discussed before, the high bypass turbofan jet engines, 80% of the air that passes through that engine. Russ Tanner's done a great piece on this, which we feature. It's actually an audio version of what Russ has put together on the front page of GeoEngineering Watch, really in great detail portraying the fact that these engines, by design, are, for all practical purposes, almost incapable of producing a condensation trail. So the total manipulation continues as we head into summer. Important to remember what it looks like. The long-term forecast is this. You're going to see more and more protracted heating. This focused cool-down area in the U.S. will begin to diminish. And as we move into the late summer and fall, after what appears to be what will be a very warm summer globally, El Nino is surfacing. In fact, some of those temperature anomalies we're seeing in the Pacific, the Eastern Pacific, are as much as 6 degrees C above normal. That's extremely high, perhaps higher than any other El Nino ever recorded if it continues to develop. And it looks like what the geoengineers are going to do is to allow that moisture to flow in off the Pacific now and use that as a swamp cooler, if you will, where they nucleate this moisture, they float it inland and try to cool down this air mass as it moves in. So it appears a change in the experiment, the ongoing experiment of which we are all a part. Now, as the walls close in the power structure, some interesting things are happening, and a very, very interesting audio has just been released that recorded the Turkish Prime Minister and some of his top officials literally discussing a false flag planned event to give the pretext for invading Syria and bringing NATO into that invasion. And this blatant discussion between these officials shows the degree of criminality that's in all governments at this point. And I encourage people to look at the transcript of this discussion or listen to it. RTTV put it out. And again, I want to discuss this a little bit today, and this relates to the climate engineering. Everything's tied together. Nothing is not connected. And that is, as the walls close in, the power structure will become increasingly desperate, and we'll see increasingly alarming things being done, like the events that have happened in Kiev over the recent few months, and the degree of outright insanity that goes on with our officials over there, landing their private jets, unloading money to pay these violent protesters that are now wreaking havoc in Kiev itself. And this is something that if it happened in the U.S., I can't imagine the blowback there would be here. I think we brought this up before, but if Putin and Chavez, if he was still around, landed their private jets in New York and unloaded a bunch of funds to pay violent protesters to sack Wall Street, we would have a war in our hands right then and there globally. So the hypocrisy of our country is absolutely mind-numbing, and I hope people take a good hard look at this, because it's interesting to me, and I think I brought this up last week, that people who know they're spraying, even some former military and other pretty prominent people in our neck of the woods in Northern California, they know they're spraying, they know their government's spraying them, but somehow when it comes to these overseas adventures, they suddenly jump behind their government again, as if somehow their government will treat them the way they know they're being treated, but somehow their government is right with these other issues, and that's a paradox to me. So also we want to bring on, again, Greg Palin about 20 after, but before we get to that point, Richard, have you had a chance to hear this dialogue between the Turkish officials regarding the false flag event? I'm kind of blindsiding you with this, I understand. I didn't give you a heads up. This is a very recent event, so you may not have heard of it.
Yeah, I listened to it, and along with detailed analysis and all kinds of on InfoWars.
Good.
But I did not find it unusual at all. That's the kind of thing that I've been familiar with for many years, happening in the U.S. government and all of its partners in NATO and beyond that. And Turkey is very closely tied in with the rulers of the U.S. right now. I don't like to call it our government, and I don't refer to it as the U.S. doing something or Turkey doing something, because even though it might seem like a subtle point, it's important for us to realize that these people do not represent either Turkey or the U.S., in both countries people are primarily normal people that just are trying to live their lives. These are small groups of organized crime.
Your points are well taken. You're exactly right. And what's astounding, though, sometimes, again, these individuals I mentioned earlier that recognize they're being sprayed, that these programs are going on, somehow when it comes to these foreign issues that they're unfolding, these people, for reasons I don't understand, jump in behind what they perceive as, quote, their government again, when, as you said, it's anything but.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the football team mentality that, they really enjoy totally identifying with one side against the other, and they don't realize that's a program that's been put into their minds by the very governments that are committing all these crimes, just so that in fighting one team against another, they'll be completely blind as to the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's a really, really accurate term, the football team mentality. Truly accurate. So, Russ, I don't know if you have a chance to see this. I know I didn't give you heads up, but it certainly isn't a surprise, as Richard says. We know this is going on. What's a surprise is that we have a tape recording of it now, finally, with modern technology, and I think people beginning to fight back against this, and tape some of these things and get them out there so that the wider audience can see and understand just how blatant and glaring all this stuff is. So, Russ, did you have a chance have you caught wind of any of this yet?
No, I'm not up to speed on that yet. Had a very busy week and lost a little bit of the news, but nevertheless, these kinds of practices, false flags, have been used since Hitler's time and long before that. And, there's three groups of people in the world: the people who don't know, the people who know, and the people who are transitioning to know right now. And so the people who know are not surprised by this. The people who don't know are considering whether something like this could really happen. And the people who are transitioning are looking at this and probably getting really scared that this kind of thing really happens. And as more and more evidence like this comes out, more and more people are transitioning and becoming informed. So I wasn't up to speed on this particular event, but this is way, way too common in today's world.
And Dane, I want to make one other comment too, and that with respect to false flags. There seems to be some kind of a code of ethics, so to speak, just like the mafia has within government criminal circles. And they like to speak blatantly about what they plan to do to us before it happens, and that's very common. And because of that, I would take it as a very serious threat that Obama just happened to casually mention that one of his biggest fears right now, as if somebody else would do it, that there might be a nuclear weapon set off in a city like New York City, I would consider that as a direct threat coming from somebody like him.
Yeah, it is exactly how they operate. And of course, while they're doing all this maneuvering, we still have the ongoing saga of the disappeared jet, which is becoming more astounding by the day. I mean, this has a hell of an odor to it. There's the way the story unfolds this direction and that direction, kind of keeps everybody on the hook. It's like some sort of a suspense novel. And I just can't believe that a jet that size just goes off the radar and for how many hours, and nobody knows where it went. And then suddenly, though, as we unfold this story, they mysteriously come up with a new piece of data here and there to sort of add to the drama. Well, why didn't they know that to begin with? You know, why weren't these facts tabled right out the gate? So, in the meantime, again, as food shortages are coming, a lot of very profound challenges are coming, and the climate engineering is tied into all of this, of course. And in the case of Russia, Russia has some very big cards to play in that as they're backed into a corner, certainly Russia knows 9/11. Russia knows what our government, or not, I don't want to say our government, you're correct in that, but what the global power structure did on 9/11. They know that. They could play that card and disclose it with their media if they chose. On the geoengineering, they know that's going on, and they're involved with it as well. But it does seem, though, Russia is one country that is making some effort to put geoengineering a little further out in the open. They've pressured the IPCC, again, to disclose this issue and talk about it on their report. Not that the IPCC is going very far with that, or haven't yet, but in any event, there's some very likely major events in store for all of us coming soon. So it's imperative everybody keep their eye on the horizon. I would encourage anybody to investigate this RTTV. You can Google that on the statements by the Turkish officials about the false flag event that they were planning. It's important for people to consider the ramifications of that sort of thing and plug it into the bigger equation, because the summer we're heading for right now, based on all available data, will be probably something different than we've seen before. We've already had fires, massive fires in Siberia, in areas of the U.S. and previous years. This year could be worse yet. And again, there's so many things unfolding right now with crop loss, ocean die-off. We've had scallops. I deal with Will Thomas. If anybody knows, he's a friend. He's up in British Columbia. The scallop farms in that area just tanked completely. 95% die-off of the scallops. The oceans are virtually dying. Again, things are unfolding very quickly, so it's important people keep their eye on a lot of these factors around the planet that are related to the climate engineering, related to the geopolitical events. Everything's tied together. So, Russ, we have, as I mentioned, Greg Palin earlier is going to join us in the conversation. And Greg is a former congressional candidate from Georgia. He's been really involved with geoengineering for a long time. He's done billboards. I think he's done 5 or 6 billboards. I'd like him to go over that with us again, literally pay for this out of his pocket. We need more activists like Greg. So, Russ, can you try to reach Greg? In the meantime, maybe you could give the call-in number 2 for people to ring in and ask questions of any of us.
Yeah, you got it, absolutely. For those who want to call in, the number is 718-717-8296. One more time, it's 718-717-8296, and I'll have Greg on with us in just a second.
Okay, and in regard to RTTV, again, and Russia's attempt to start disclosing certain issues, I think Max Kaiser, who's a financial show on RTTV, for anybody who knows who that is, the headlines here is Max Kaiser drops 9/11 insider trading bombshell. Now, this is, to me, a more indirect way of them trying to start pulling the curtain back on 9/11 when they are addressing the insider trading that occurred, which means clearly people knew it was coming. They tried to capitalize on that. They did. And these are cards, I think, that Russia may begin to play, because Russia knows if the American population could be woken up, that it would change the dynamics of the situation. Russ, you got that on air still?
Yeah, I'm pulling Greg in right now. Sorry about the thing, but that's the only thing.
Okay.
Hi there, Greg.
Yeah.
Let me try calling you back, Greg. We're trying to get you on GeoEngineering Watch Radio, but the audio is real bad. I'm going to call you right back.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, that one was a real fuzzy one. So with any government, Russia's history is not anything remotely close to benign. My wife, as I mentioned before, is from Lithuania, and they were an occupied country, and you have how many of Russia's population was systematically murdered in years past. It's certainly a dark history there. But what's the case today? Who's doing the most damage today? And who's really fomenting this global chaos today? And I would point the finger squarely at the NATO powers in this case, that whatever government has the most power, clearly it's the U.S. and the NATO powers, and they are wreaking havoc around the globe, trying to topple country after country. And people need to look at a current standpoint. Let's hope we get Greg here.
Yeah, Greg should be on any. Yeah, sorry, it's the only way to get him on, so he should be on in a second.
I kind of dumped this on Russ at the last minute. Hey, Greg.
Hello. Hey, Dane.
Good to have you on air, my friend. And Russ has got us all patched in. I gave a little bit of a background on your involvement with the climate engineering activism and so forth, the billboards you've done. But what did you actually first tell us about your run for Congress, what happened, and what you encountered if you tried to address the issue of climate engineering? Give us a little background there.
Yeah, basically in 2012, I was actually going to just help out a candidate that was running for Congress, and I went to listen to him speak, and to make a long story short, I decided I needed to run against him, and really started seeing the chemtrails in the sky, probably not as early as you did, but I've put up billboards on the interstate, basically promoting what in the world are they spraying, as you well know. But when I ran for Congress, I wish I could have. I was recommended that I didn't talk about chemtrails a whole lot because people might perceive me as a tin hat. I think I might have make a different decision now and really attack the issue because I'm with you. We don't have a lot of time here, and we can't afford to worry about political correctness and what's going to get us elected. We need to worry about what's going to kill us in the short term, you know. But in 2012, I ran for Congress. We did very well, got about 47% of the vote. And with only 3 months to spare, my opponent had been in the race for about a year before me, and we ended up with 47% of the vote, so I was pleased with that. But wish I could have won so that I could have fought this issue that we're going to talk about today and taken it head on. But, you know, I guess hopefully we'll have time for it next time.
Well, you've tried. I mean, you've certainly done way more than most. And curious, if you don't mind me asking on those billboards, because a lot of people are asking about that now, Greg, you know, people that want to do that in key locations. But approximately, if you don't mind sharing, what's the cost of a billboard on a main highway? At least
you can get it done for anywhere, and again, I'm trying to think of a reason for anybody not to think about doing it. And I'm going to address your price issue, but let me say this first. I mean, if you could get 20 people together at $50 a piece, there's your $1,000, and you literally can place a billboard. I think I paid on I-20 around $1,000 per month. Now, if you go on 285, the perimeter around Atlanta, which is more of a high traffic count area, you might be looking at more like $2,500 to $3,000 a month. But I think I was paying somewhere between $1,000 to $1,500 for I-20. Right along I-20, which is still obviously good traffic count. That's in my hometown, and I put up several billboards. I put up billboards for What in the World Are They Spraying? I put up billboards for Oath Keepers, which is a cause near and dear to my heart, number one tenet. We will not obey orders to disarm the American people. And I also put up a billboard for InfoWars, just because I would like to see people accessing the alternative media as opposed to the mainstream media and get a real education. Not to say everything is 100%, but I find that Alex is doing a much better job than ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and the rest. But to answer your question, I would say anywhere between 1,000. you know, if you put one in L.A., I don't know, they might be $10,000. I don't know based on traffic count, but that's what it's all based on. And even in a high traffic count area in Atlanta, it was about $3,000 a month in the maximum area of traffic count.
How many months minimum do you have to? Is there any criteria?
Well, what's great about it, Dane, is that the digital billboards, if you put up a fabric or a bricks and mortar billboard, that being the actual media, you might have to do a 3-month minimum. With the digital media, literally they can put up a billboard in seconds. I found that out when I did it. I mean, you get the design right, boom, it's up, and they can shut it off just as fast. So I found that I could do like a 1-month medium if you can get a digital billboard, 1 month minimum, and you can run it obviously for as many months as you want. But this was 3 years ago I did that when I put the billboards up for the different causes. But and I ran different versions. But again, I would really encourage people to get a pool together, even if it's $10 a piece. Get 100 people, to do the $1,000 at $10 a piece. It can be done. It's just going to take a little longer that way. But I just felt good about
with actually whatever image you put up. How much work is involved besides a straight price? Does the billboard company take care of that for you?
Yes. There was no design charge in my case. From my recollection, they were willing to do that. In fact, they changed my Oath Keepers message and my "What in the world are they spraying" message 2 or 3 times for no cost, no additional cost. So it is a great way to get the message out. And if you want to tweak it, if you didn't say quite the right thing, you put a different phone number, different website. It was great. It was great. And I know that it works because I've been in restaurants where I've heard people actually talking about the fact they saw this billboard with a plane on it, and people need to do this. You and I have talked in private about, and I agree with you 100%. This is the most important topic of our time. I'm big on gun rights also, but this is the number one topic, and people are going to have to, if you've got any money in your bank account at all left after this, what the economy's done to us, by design, you might want to consider breaking loose a few of those dollars or coins and pooling them together and get some billboards. I want to do it again, Dane. We need to talk about it and figure out a way to get a lot of billboards up,
Well, certainly the walls are closing in. The dialogue on this issue is increasing by the day, and of course, a lot of these organizations like IPCC refer to this as proposals again, but that's getting to be a pretty hard position to maintain when there's so much dialogue about this. And we've had now a serious inquiry from Malta. I don't know how many people have seen that article we posted on GeoEngineering Watch, but we have officials from the Gaia Foundation now asking the government to disclose what the hell is going on in the skies above.
Exactly.
So,
and by and large, we spend a lot of time on congressional, senatorial, gubernatorial websites and Facebooks asking the candidates and the incumbents, what do you plan on doing about geoengineering? And we also will extend that to fluoride in the water, GMO foods, and vaccines. All 4 of those areas of concern, obviously geoengineering being, I think, the most important. But, gosh, it seems like
geoengineering is it's the one certainly you can't escape from, and the one that has the most all-encompassing ramifications. And that's hopefully people from the other camps will start to pull together with us in this cause. And it's certainly the one that carries the most gravity and is wreaking the most havoc on the planet. I mean, you can avoid a vaccination even for my kids. We're told, a lot of people believe that you can't put your kids in school if you don't vaccinate them, and that's absolutely a lie. So you just have to sign a waiver for that, and they don't let you know that. They really try to hide that fact. But my kids are not being vaccinated. You can hide from a lot of these issues or avoid them, but we certainly can't avoid what we're breathing every day. And and the ramifications.
Exactly. And you can make your choices on food. You can grow your own food and eat organic and do the best you can. But I agree with you. I've been working on a cabin up in the mountains and talking to the locals up there. And it's funny because some of these people feel like they're so prepared. They can hunt, they can fish, they can can food. But, you know, you try to get the point in their head that I don't care how prepared you are, you can't control the air you breathe unless you wear a gas mask, you know?
And you can't hunt what's not there. Again, I've said
exactly. Good call.
I mean, our woods that were teeming with life 10 years ago are now largely silent. And I, knowing the woods as well as I do, I would have an extremely difficult time supporting myself out there, let alone anything or anyone else, any part of my family. And every day
same can be said for the fish count.
Exactly.
You know?
It's crashing. It's absolutely crashing. So, and the ocean's the same thing. Russ, Richard, hey, if you got any questions for Greg, you guys fire away. I mean, Greg's been at this a long time. He knows Cynthia McKinney. Anybody who knows who Cynthia is, she's extremely courageous, former congresswoman, U.S. congresswoman that has done a great deal for the common good. I had the pleasure of having lunch with her in L.A. In 2012, and she's certainly advocate for our cause as well, right, Greg? Cynthia knows. I mean, we certainly discussed it in L.A., and I think you guys have ongoing dialogue on the climate.
Definitely, yes. We talk quite often. In fact, Cynthia was at my house. We had dinner. That probably goes back 4 or 5 months ago now. But she came. We walked out on the dock, and she looked up, and she was like, "Look at the chemtrails." And I just lit up because it was so nice to spend time with her. And unfortunately, the system flat out destroyed her. There is a documentary called American Blackout. If you want to verify, you know, what I'm saying when I say they destroyed her, they did destroy her. And the reason they destroyed her is because she's very sharp, she's very bright, and she's a bulldog. And I wish we still had her in Congress. It's a shame what happened to her, but yes,
she is a great gal. I mean,
yeah, and we did a homeless food drive, canning coat and blanket drive. Actually, yeah, is what it was called at Christmas time, and worked together on that, taking truckloads of coats and blankets to the homeless, and went to a homeless shelter. And she's just a great person. People that do those kind of things are typically just salt of the earth type of folks, and I'm very impressed with her, and I try to feed her as much information as I can because she's got a huge list of followers and Facebook likes and friends, and so I try to feed her as much chemtrail information as I can so she can spread that, you know, to her crowd. And
but when you push back too hard, like Dennis Kucinich did in trying to address the quote unquote chemtrails issue in legislation early, Kucinich's brother died under very suspicious circumstances. And then Dennis really backed away from the climate engineering issue or addressing it very openly. So it's very hard to know exactly what pressures are being applied to make sure that people like Kucinich or Cynthia McKinney don't openly address this issue while they're in office.
I'm sure you're probably familiar with Sibel Edmonds.
Yeah.
Former FBI translator. She's got a website called Boiling Frogs, and she talks about, you know, a fourth branch of government that is basically, in a nutshell, blackmail, you know. And I think a lot of that does go on. I've heard that, you know, just intimidation. You could lose your retirement, you could lose your job, you could lose, you know, and a lot of people will back off. And sadly, there's a whole lot of individuals, including Michael Hastings, and you know, I could go on, that died of suspicious causes. Breitbart, you know, but you know, if we're all running scared.
Don't know who Sybil is, Greg, and just I'll explain to listeners, and you can elaborate. But Sybil was a translator, correct? And she was trying to get data out that was very contrary to the official narrative with some of her translations, and as soon as she did, she was completely ostracized from the system, correct?
Yep.
So
yeah, and she does a great job of describing. I would recommend people go to Boiling Frogs and look back through her archives I don't remember right offhand because I actually just got done working on a production machine at my plant, so I was a little bit rattled when I answered the phone, so forgive me if I sounded so. But she is a one sharp cookie, and again, she talks in detail about, you know, how the blackmail works in the system. And again, I've heard this from other sources. You know, set somebody up in a hotel room, photograph it, film it, and now you got them. You know, and we wonder why our congressmen, in many cases, are voting against the will of the American people in their states and their counties and their districts. I truly believe that it is that bad. I know it's that bad. That, and you know, if I get droned on the way home, that's just the way it works. I'm not going to run scared. And Dane, I'm so, you know, I don't have many heroes. I don't know if I've ever really had a hero, maybe as a kid, but you're pretty fearless, and you know, I look up to you, and I'm proud of what you're doing, because it's dangerous. It's dangerous what I do too. I knew when I put up billboards, there have been many times where I felt the fear, but we're going to have to get over that, and because
we're all in this together. We are all in this
What?
together, and Russ, Richard, you, all of us. I appreciate the statements, but I hold the same regard for all of you. We're all in this together. We're all just as devoted to it. Every one of us matter to the equation, and again, it's in pulling all of us together.
And all of us bring different things to the table and different perspectives and different levels of research on different topics. You know,
every single one of us matters in this equation. And only by marching together can we really have the chance of prevailing and bring this to light. And I think our numbers are growing by the day. In fact,
there's no doubt about it. And that's why I ran, to go back to why I ran for Congress. A lot of my volunteers were Iraq veterans, you know, 28, 30 years old. Most of my volunteers were in their 20s, literally. And when I look at the opportunities I had to build a business, and do well, and the financial freedoms that come with that, and I know you did well in your solar business, and the ability to have a home and have a nice car, and I see some of my campaign volunteers going from job to job to job because the Georgia DOT hires on a contract now, and they you know, we're done with you. They don't want to pay insurances anymore. It's just things have changed, and the land of opportunity is not what it used to be. And I feel sad for the younger generation that just isn't going to have the opportunities that you and I had. You know,
not coming back. And hey, Richard and Russ, I want to pull you guys into the equation. I mean, on that note, and what Greg describes is certainly what we've all grown up with, and I think we're all pretty similar ages, so we've experienced, you know, a similar reality. But that reality is waning by the day. It's not coming back, and it's not just about economics, or when you hear on the media this talk about expansion, expand where? With what resources? And at this point, the reality we've known for many reasons is not coming back. So Russ and Richard, I'd like both your guys' take on the fact and how you're accepting the fact that the reality we've known is over, and are people around you accepting that? Because the sooner we accept that, and the sooner we focus on what we can yet do to positively affect the equation, to salvage some sort of life support system on our planet, the sooner we accept what is, and instead of spinning around in angst and dismay, focus on what we can yet do, the better off we're going to be, correct?
Well, that's always the problem. Is the first step to recovery is admitting that there's a problem. And I see people around me waking up slowly. There are a considerable number of people waking up, and they are coming in to, you know, I hear from people every week, new people who just have their eyes open. And, you know, one thing I'd like to mention about this, which is really encouraging, is that, you know, the people who wake up, all you have to do is tell them to look up, and they get it. It's amazing that for years have gone by and they haven't looked up. So there's a whole group of people out there that you just need to point this out. And if you have people that you point this out to and you tell them to look up and they don't get it, move on and look for the people who can put the pieces together in their mind, because I believe there's enough of them out there. So people are waking up. So the numbers are growing, so that's encouraging. Richard?
Yeah, I agree. And Greg, it's really enjoyable to listen to you. I've been highly involved in all of the different issues that you brought up in your list. And my take is that they're all the same issue. And I'm coming from, my background back into the early 1960s as a independent health scientist. So I originally I was confronted by the fake healthcare system as just one more face of the same issue, and had to figure out for myself the origin and cure of degenerative diseases and aging, so-called, in order to survive. So I did that, but it took me into all these other areas as well. And where I see the chemtrails or the geoengineering fitting in is that it's all being done at the top by the same group of individuals, and I've traced that group back at least 4,000 years under different names, and I see this as what they hope to be their end game. So the climate may be, one particular part of it that's capable of destroying all life on Earth, but it even goes much further than climate, and it's in the process of actually destroying the entire ecosystem. So
if I could elaborate on.
Yeah, go ahead, Dane.
Richard, when you say 4,000 years back, and for a lot of people, that's a hard one for them to really accept that could possibly be true. And there was a point where I would not have believed that, but I do now, because the data simply supports that. And the kind of core group of insanity, this sort of secret society, have in fact existed this long, just like religions have existed this long. There's no difference.
Exactly.
In many ways, there's no difference. And they go from generation to generation to generation, just like religions, because in fact, in a sense, that's what it is, a very dark form of religion. And so those who scoff at this and think that this is preposterous, it couldn't be, are simply ignorant. They have not done their research, or they would find out this is in fact the case. And Greg, in a form of self-censorship, I want to mention again, you brought up political suicide if you mention this sort of thing. Isn't it self-censorship that really controls much of hiding of these programs? So many people are so well trained. They know not to bite the hand that feeds them.
No doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. We find, in fact, I was considering running for a state house seat, a congressional seat again, and just discussing with Cynthia actually where would be a good place to do so, where could be most effective. And in talking with even the libertarians, and I'm not going to name any names here, but you obviously have the left-right paradigm with the Democrats and Republicans, but I talked to one of the liberty groups, one of the large ones, again, I won't name a name, but his reaction was, well, you can't talk about chemtrails, you can't talk about fluoride, you have to stick with the things that are going to get you contributions, that being, jobs and economy. That's what it was back in 2012, too. We can only talk about jobs and economy. I've talked to Congress people, sitting congressmen on the House floor, that have said to me, and I'm talking incumbents that have been in there for multi-terms, have said to me, Greg, my constituents are concerned about jobs and the economy. And my response was, well, we might want to start thinking about our children and their health. And this is not about, I don't even have kids, and I know you do, Dane. I have nieces and nephews and such, but this is not about even our children. It literally is about the future of humanity. We're talking about scientific dictatorship. We're talking about transhumanism, and that's really getting out there. But if you study that, these are some, like you said, psychotic people. And we have to start changing the talking points. And then I wrote a note this morning to a supporter that basically addressed that point, that we have to go to these political forums and we have to hold these people accountable. And if we get carted off in a paddy wagon, I guess that's the way it goes. And that's what they're doing in Livonia, Michigan. I got a video of that yesterday, toting off a protester at a city council meeting. But we're going to have to get loud, and we're going to have to start asking these questions about geoengineering, about fluoride, instead of solely being concerned about jobs and the economy.
Well, and the other thing I have to mention with that, Greg, too, this is Richard, is that the reason that people are concerned with what they think is the jobs in the economy, they've been trained to believe that jobs come from the government handing you a job, which the government, of course, is obliging that now and giving you a job in Homeland Security or some branch of enforcement, all of which are hiring, getting ready for war against the people. But that's not really what happened to the economy. It was destroyed step by step through fairly simple measures that people could understand within about half an hour if they want to. And once those kind of facts are discussed by anybody publicly, then maybe, the demand for government to just hand out everybody's sustenance, which is exactly what government wants us to ask for so they can control all the food and etc. If people understood what happened to the economy and why it got to the state it's in now, that ties exactly into what's going on behind the geoengineering. It's the
no
same
doubt about
subject.
it. And it's drop by drop. It saddens me to watch what's happened with the economy. They crash the economy, then everybody's got to work harder. They have their normal responsibilities. They're working more hours, and now they don't have as much time, unless they're without a job, to do the research to discover these key facts.
Right.
The NWO works drop by drop. It's so slow that over a period of time, you might notice it, a long period of time.
Well,
yeah,
the
reason the economy was crashed is because it makes it impossible for people to pay attention, and it ultimately makes them completely reliant on their enslavers. So it all goes together.
Definitely.
There are wider facts to this, too. I don't disagree with anything that was said, but there are wider issues that the planet simply, with this paradigm and the structure, cannot support what the current population, and especially with this current paradigm, it cannot support that. I just posted an article that I thought was brilliantly written. I encourage everybody to look for this and read it. It's on the top of the recent column at geoengineeringwatch.org. And the title of this article is On Climate Impasse, Appetite, and Substitutes. And it's truly by a brilliant writer from India. And what he cites in that article is the realities that we face, that this notion of continued expansion on a finite planet with a population that's absolutely exploding is ludicrous. Any notion that this could have continued is ludicrous. We've gone from, just over 100 years, we've gone from 1 billion population to 7. How could that possibly continue? It can't continue, and it's not going to continue. But again, but this is part of the programming that I think Richard's brought up. People have been programmed not to consider such things. They just believe what they're told. If we just had this economic policy or that economic policy, or we substitute in renewable energy, for example. In the case of renewable energy, just something to point out. In the case of solar panel production, photovoltaic production, that's not so environmentally friendly, by the way. I'm off-grid. I certainly have tried to do what I could, but a couple fun facts on production of solar panels. Hexafluorethane is 12,000 times more potent to greenhouse gas than CO2. Nitrogen trifluoride, 17,000 times more potent to greenhouse gas than CO2, both used heavily in the production of solar panels. How environmentally friendly is that? So this article, again, that I encourage people to read and examine, outlines very, very articulately a wider scope of what we face and the true implications of all the other factors that so many don't seem to consider with our equation. So again, there's a lot to this situation. It's not just some bad policy here or there. There's a lot of details with that are hard facts to face, given the populations we have, given the resource depletion, so on and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of very hard challenges coming.
Dane, I want to make one comment about the energy issue that you just brought up. There's a reason that the powers that be, which is organized crime at the highest level, is allowing the current state of the solar industry to exist, but is absolutely destroying anybody that brings up the free energy, the clean energy, that has none of those drawbacks, that has been available for a long time and could very quickly cover vast amounts of electric usage. Those people are imprisoned or killed, And that's why the alternative energy looks like it's only solar and wind.
I agree. There's some incredible technologies that have likely been suppressed completely. And that would certainly be a giant leap in the right direction.
You can't do anything about population in your own family once they're existing. So I would, although his comments are right, I think it makes much more sense to focus on things with our existing population that doesn't require killing anybody, that will radically drop our resource consumption without dropping quality of life. And we have the means to do that right now, and it's not being done for very specific reasons.
No arguments there. And again, I'm not suggesting, that there's anything that's justifiable with the sort of Agenda 21 programs that are being implemented, but I'm simply saying it's important for people to look at the full range of facts so that they understand that we're not just going to implement a new change of economic programs A, B, and C and end up happily ever after. Not going to happen. The equation is much more complex than that. So just encouraging people to investigate, look at the wider picture, try to understand all the dynamics and everything you're being fed. When you hear analysts talking about such and such is going to happen in 2030 and 2040, they're completely in fantasy land, long before we ever reach any of those dates. What's that?
Well, the meltdown is occurring as we speak.
As we speak, now. Correct.
Yeah, they're given those scripts for a reason. It's not always because they believe them. It's because they're intended to be read to the public for a certain effect.
Exactly.
And, I also think that the thing with the geoengineering is a lot like treating cancer with chemotherapy. And in most cases, you're definitely going to kill the patient, and that's just simply what's happening. Yes, it's the climate, but you can't poison all the soil and the whole web of life and expect the planet to survive. Even if the weather was unchanged, it would kill everybody.
I agree.
Hi, Greg.
So many of these points, it's a big, I always look at it to connect the dots. And one dot, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Georgia Guidestones or not, but that is a very interesting, do a Google search the listeners can do a Google search of Georgia Guidestones, and the number one tenet is maintain world population at 500 million or less. In John Holdren's book, Ecoscience, he writes ideal world population of 1 billion or less. We are viewed, unfortunately, and people find this hard to believe, as goyim or cattle in the protocols of science, if you read them. So sadly, we view ourselves as valuable human beings, and we view others as valuable human beings, but they don't view us as valuable human beings.
Hey, we've got some callers and we've got some questions from the chat. Would you like to take them?
Yeah, blow them through quick. And hey, just to back up while you're pulling that through, Russ, as the email Greg you sent me this morning with the Protocols of Zion, I encourage people to look that up, read it, consider it. It has nothing to do with anything anti-Semitic. It's simply a fact that there's a sect called the Zionists that seem to have had a lot planned for a very long time. I encourage people to read that, and there's a lot of very, very good, courageous Jewish people standing up against this. So I hope people investigate that issue. Russ, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we got Greg. Thanks for being with us, and I really appreciate what you're doing. This is Russ. I wanted to pass along a question from the chat room. You mentioned American Blackout earlier. Is that available on YouTube?
I believe that is on YouTube. American Blackout. Isn't that where we? Yeah, American Blackout should be on YouTube. There's another documentary called Hacking Democracy that's on Hulu, and sometimes I get those two. That's another great. If you want to see how our system operates and why we may already be Stalin says it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. You should watch Hacking Democracy on Hulu. But yes, American Blackout should be on YouTube, and that's a great documentary of what Cynthia McKinney went through, closing her blinds at night and threats, and she's still concerned, being followed, she's being stalked. She held my girlfriend's hand and she said, and she looked into her eyes and said, they destroyed me. They humiliated me. And she said, they humiliated me. Heartbreaking, yeah.
Yeah, this is the way it works, definitely. I mean, We've seen people like that destroyed. We saw Tropicon from Ohio, who introduced a bill to shut down the IRS, destroyed. And he has an interesting story to tell about how he was framed. We've got some callers. Caller with the phone number that ends in 08. You're on. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Hi, what's your name?
Very good. Who are we speaking with?
This is Desert Hawk.
Hey, Desert Hawk. What's on your mind?
I've been listening for a while. I've been holding for a while. You were talking about chem planes, right?
That's a usual discussion here, yeah.
Okay. If memory serves, after 9/11, didn't they shut down all commercial air traffic?
They did. In fact, this could be, if anybody wants to outline what I think you're heading toward here, there's a film posted on the front page of GeoEngineeringWatch.org, center column, called Dimming the Sun.
Yeah, well, they can check it out on CNN and everything else. After 9/11, all air traffic was shut down. So why is it after this MH370 is still missing? It's still missing, even though it's one of the most high-tech planes ever built. Why is it there's still planes flying around?
I'm not sure I'm following you on that.
Well, they're saying on the news that it could have been, or it might have, could have, would have been a terrorist event, right?
Yeah, that's what they allude to.
That's what they're saying. If after 9/11 they shut down all the air traffic except for the Saudi Arabians, why aren't they shutting down all the traffic for this?
Well, I think we're talking about. Yeah, I understand your point. If it's just flying around, but I think at this point we know it's
good.
Yeah, we know it's not flying around still, but there's an odor to all of this. We understand that, and we all are suspect of this issue too. We discussed it earlier in the show, so I think it has a hell of an odor to it that this plane could just disappear. Where is it?
Yeah, it has an odor to it. So why aren't they shutting down all the air traffic?
Good question. And again, in regard to something I thought you might be mentioning after 9/11, after they shut down all the air traffic, there were profound changes in climate and temperature from those 2 days without the spraying going on, and people can examine that as well. So a lot of aspects to this.
You're right. Now, is this Russ I'm talking to?
No, this is Dane.
Dane? Okay, You're absolutely right. See, this is a situation where if we could get enough attention on this, have them follow their original protocol of shutting down all the air traffic, all the commercial air traffic.
Yeah, you know what's not going to happen, though.
Well, hey, who says? Who says? Who says it can't happen? They're saying that there's a plane out there that can kill us. That means it's a threat.
Yeah,
right?
If you know a way to make it happen, we're all listening. But again, the power structure controls these things, and they only do what they choose to do at this point. But hey, thanks for the call. That point's well considered. I want to suggest to people before we lose time here, and the caller's point is valid. I mean, if they chose to shut down the system and try to find this plane, they could. But the bottom line is, this seems to be some sort of diversionary maneuver, this whole missing plane thing. But
I agree, Dane. Distraction.
For those who haven't seen RT-TV, I want to encourage people to watch RT. There's a direct feed link posted on the left side, front page, Geoengineering Watch. Good source of news, data. Watch the wider picture. So I'm sorry, Russ, go ahead. I know we're almost out of time.
Yeah, maybe we can squeeze another caller. Thank you, Desert Hawk, for your call. I appreciate that.
Thank you, yeah.
A caller with the number that ends in 22. Welcome. Who are we talking with?
Go.
Yes, this is Alan from Colorado. Thanks for taking my call.
Hi, Alan.
Hey, I know we're short on time, but I know the CDC came out with the 30% increase in autism in 2 years, from 2012 to 2014. Now 1 in every 63 babies have autism now. And I noticed in the 2 years that there's serious rampage in the skies with the complete whiteouts almost on a daily basis. And I'm personally going to go to the Autism Society of Colorado, and I would encourage activists to really engage and go to the autism centers. And Dane, if you can maybe give us a pitch on what the best approach is on that.
That's the kind of activism we need. Thank you.
Well, Greg, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Russ and Richard. I really enjoyed it. I think it was really good.
All right, thank you, guys. We will be here next week at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 Pacific Time, at GeoEngineering Watch Radio on UCY.TV. We'll see you next week.